Hello, guys. Welcome back to Chasing the Dream. My name is Ethan Chazin. I am a New York City-based business growth coach, and I focus on helping organizations to create amazing transformational cultures. Today's video is going to sound like a rant, but trust me when I say it's critically important. So I work with organizations to unleash their employees' untapped potential and teach them how to take on more ethical leadership. This podcast, Chasing the Dream, that I do is dedicated to shining a spotlight on those individuals, leaders, business owners, people who are thought leaders in the field of organizations doing really ethical things, bringing morality to corporate America in the 21st century. But having said that, the last few videos that I've recorded have unfortunately focused on a prevailing theme, a trend of corporate greed. And recently, I did a video on how the multinational corporation of the 21st century, through its behaviors, can reduce war and reduce poverty. I also did a video on the recent murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and primary suspect Luigi Mangione being arrested. But when you look at the framework of corporate America, we've got a lot of issues that we need to address. So let's dive right in. So taken from Workplace just a few months ago, September 4th, 2024, most unethical behavior goes unreported and unresolved, from some pretty insightful reporting done by Andy Kemp. So I want to start out there. Unethical behavior varies widely in severity, from disparaging a coworker to securities fraud. But overall, get this, nearly 1 in 4 US employees, 23%, say that they've personally seen or have firsthand knowledge of their colleagues or a manager demonstrating unethical behavior just in the last year, in 2024. These findings were collected in a nationally representative May 2024 Gallup survey of 21,543 employees. This is a real interesting observation from the Gallup organization. So increased exposure to ethics violations is a symptom of failing management and an unhealthy organizational culture that hinders employees' ability and desire to show up and perform at work every day. So when we ask as an organization, how do we get our people to show up and engage and to be meaningfully owning their responsibility for their work? Well, this doesn't happen when you have unethical behavior in an organization. So employees with firsthand awareness of unethical behavior in their organization are 2.7 times as likely to be actively disengaged and 2.3 times as likely to be burned out as their peers. Translation: people with a moral compass, people who want to do right and do good, they're ethical, they suffer an exceptional amount in organizations that don't, from a culture standpoint, share their values. So a majority of unethical behavior goes unreported, unresolved. So in other words, leave it alone. That's the prevailing mindset of senior leadership and ownership. Don't address it at a fundamental core problem. So an unmitigated and normalized ethical violations can compound and fuel an unhealthy culture that enables them in the first place. So, for example, if one employee is not addressed by their manager after cutting corners in a quality assurance process, it signals to the others that they can and possibly should do the same without consequence, and promotes the perception that other unethical behavior will go unpunished as well. Less than half of these 21,543 employees, 43%, who had firsthand awareness of unethical behavior in the past year within their organization, say that they reported it. Less than half, whether directly to someone in their organization or through some kind of anonymous tip line. Among employees' top reasons for not reporting unethical behavior, 22% say they thought no action would be taken. 20% said that they were afraid of retaliation. 9% previously reported a compliance or ethics issue. Wasn't a good experience. We wonder, therefore, if this is just the tip of the iceberg and it's not indicative of prevailing 21st century American corporate malfeasance, or if there's an institutionalized systemic animosity towards ethical behavior by today's modern corporation. So in the past, this is the Gallup survey. I want to just kind of dive into the numbers a little bit. In the past 12 months, have you personally seen, or do you have firsthand knowledge of employees or managers who've demonstrated unethical behavior? 23% yes. Okay. I just mentioned this. 43% said they did report it. 57% said they didn't. So why? Who did you report it to? 50% said my manager. But let's dive into the other side of the equation. Those who didn't report unethical behavior, what was the primary reason for not reporting it? I thought no action would be taken, 22%. I was afraid of retaliation, 20%. I prefer not to answer, 20%, which is in and of itself revealing. So this is the Gallup organization, a reputable global research firm, spoke to 21,543 employees, and this is what's going on. What's needed in organizations to buck this trend of unethical behavior is you need managers. You need people who are strongly oriented through a strong moral compass, we call it probity, of building cultures that exhibit ethical behavior. Half of employees who reported instances of unethical behavior, 50%, turned to their managers first. Managers are the first line of defense. So what I try to coach in my consulting practice is organizations need to understand the ones that are still structured with this pyramid command control, a few at the top, most at the bottom. In the middle is this thing called middle management, right? And that's a buffer. But it needs to be a mindset of managers now need to become leaders to become incentivized and encouraged and hired on attributes of ethical behavior. We need that. So I want to talk about health insurance because in my last video on the fatal shooting of Brian Thompson, United Healthcare CEO here in New York City, right before a scheduled earnings meeting, it got me to think about healthcare and COVID, the COVID pandemic, and insurance, and the state of healthcare. I've had a lot of guests come on Chasing the Dream who are in the field of healthcare and insurance and talking about health and wellness. So this has been top of mind for me. A report shows that health insurance is just damn near inadequate for a majority of Americans. So Joseph Burns, Liz Seeger, from December 2023. Half of working age adults said it was very or somewhat difficult to afford healthcare costs. So these are working Americans. So when you say in the survey, how difficult, if at all, is it for you and your family to afford your healthcare costs? 51% said it was. 51% of employees surveyed said it was difficult. This is not good. Health insurance provides insufficient coverage for the care most Americans need from an organization called the Commonwealth Fund. Half of working age adults with health insurance struggles to pay for health care, and 1/3 of all those surveyed carry debt. The survey, just for those who are interested, and I'll put the link in the description below, but the survey conducted by the Commonwealth Fund, the title is Paying for It, Healthcare Costs, Medical Debt Are Making Americans Sicker and Poorer. So when we talk about institutionalized unethical behavior and inherent problems with corporate America, this is some of the insight. This is some of where we need to get to as a society in terms of ethical organizations. It's one thing to give lip service, but it's another thing to still not focus on your employees or your customers, but to focus on maximizing shareholder value. And I thought we were moving past that. But of late, I'm getting just too much anecdotal evidence just to imply that we're not quite there yet. While most Americans are aware of the failings of the US health insurance system, the report from the Commonwealth Fund shows that inadequate health insurance coverage leads to worsening health and rising medical debt. It also causes consumers to delay or skip health care altogether. This is what's going on in America. This is what's going on. And it's extremely disturbing. Having health insurance is always better than not having it, right? This is what the researchers of the Commonwealth Fund noted. But even healthy and insured Americans can fall into medical debt and skip getting care, according to Sarah Collins, who was the lead author of this research and vice president of the healthcare coverage Commonwealth Fund. Many people avoid getting care they need because out-of-pocket costs are too high. This can't happen. This can't happen in a post-industrial, supposedly enlightened society. It just can't. This points to the need to fix and improve health insurance across all sources of coverage. So yeah, but I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to actually reference an article that just came out last month, November 4th, 2024, from The Lever. And if you don't support them, I'm going to give a little shout out. I've been looking at their research. It's a critically important service they provide in terms of holding people accountable. It's really important. It's really important to create objective accountability. This election, healthcare is on life support. In the heart of the state, Pennsylvania, talk about swing state number one that could have decided the election. People are grappling with a crisis that's been ignored by both major political parties. The Democrats and the Republicans didn't talk health insurance. They didn't. Perhaps it's that third rail. Perhaps it's that improvised explosive device, that IED of electoral politics on a national level. But let's kind of go into this. I want to kind of talk this through. According to a survey by the Association of Healthcare Journalists, roughly half of working age adults have health insurance that provides insufficient coverage and leads to delayed or skipped coverage. So, in the final days of this 2024 national presidential election cycle here in the United States, Pennsylvania, which was identified pretty consistently as one of, if not the key swing states between going Democrat or Republican, it was flooded with advertisements between Kamala Harris's campaign, Donald Trump's campaign. They spent over $500 million in Pennsylvania, more than in any other state. The average Pennsylvanian household got exposed to 16 advertising messages each day. But the ads that were all over state media in Pennsylvania focused on economy and culture wars and barely any mention whatsoever of healthcare. As the New York Times noted back in this October, the topic of healthcare reform has been virtually absent from a presidential contest. Wonder why? Do you think it wasn't critically important and that's why both parties just glossed over it? I think more fundamentally, the political establishment is afraid to go there. Cowards, afraid to go there. The contrast between the campaign messages that were flooding in Pennsylvania and healthcare needs of people, like an individual surveyed, is glaring omission in the 2024 election cycle. In contrast to years past, neither candidate, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, offered any vision of healthcare reform, not just some, but any vision of healthcare reform in the United States, despite consistent polling that was showing that voters are deeply concerned about medical care and its costs, and the fact that major healthcare matters, from skyrocketing drug costs to the fate of Medicare, this is going to be decided by Donald J. Trump. And if you look at his administration, incoming administration's 2025 plan, holy crap, do we need to wake up? We need to wake up to what is down the road. Having said that, I want to talk about something interesting that I discovered. So again, another admirable organization doing significantly important research and coverage of all of this business ethics and corporate greed is the state of moral leadership in business 2024 by the Howe Institute for Society. So above all, moral leadership is about how leaders touch hearts, not just minds, how they enlist others in a shared and significant endeavor and create the conditions where everyone can contribute their character and creativity, says founder of the Howe Institute for Society, Dov Seidman. Moral leadership remains in high demand. So the percentage of employees surveyed who believe that the need for moral leadership is more urgent than ever. Going back 4 years, it was 86%. 2022 went up slightly to 88%. And in 2024, boom, nearly universal concern for the state of ethical leadership in corporate enterprises. 93%. More leadership elevates team behavior. So when we look at those surveyed, we say, people on my team speak out when they see something that contradicts our values or is unethical. In top-tier organizations, it's 65%. But it drops off precipitously once you get outside that top tier of most ethical organizations. It goes down to about 34, 35% in the second tier. When you look at other survey questions, such as there's a high level of trust on my team. In top tier organizations, it's pretty straightforward. Nearly 75% say that this is something that they agree to, and then it drops off in tiers 2, 3, 4. So there's a large disparity between a relatively small number of highly ethical, morally motivated organizations and the rest. And I will, again, put a link to the Howe Institute's research so that you can kind of go for yourself. But moral leadership and the challenge of impunity, or people doing unethical acts and without the fear of reprisal, without the fear of being punished. So high-performing employees in my organization frequently get away with being disrespectful or abusive to others. I want to go there. I want to go there. 25% agree. 13% agree strongly. That means 38% of all of these employees surveyed said that the people who perform at a high level are allowed, ethics don't apply to them. So that's the first disconcerting set of results, or results to the survey question. Second, my organization often rewards results over respectful conduct. So again, this is being institutionalized in organizations where they're being incentivized to perform, achieve financial performance at all costs. So what percent responded? So you have 38% of employees surveyed agreed or strongly agreed that my organization often rewards results over respectful conduct. Third, in my organization, achieving high performance metrics is valued more than adhering to positive workplace behavior and culture norms. 30% either agree or agree strongly. These numbers are too high, ladies and gentlemen. These numbers reflect a moral abyss. Moral leadership guides a meaningful return to the office. So, what we need to think about, what is the result? What are the ramifications of these lacking standards of ethical business practice? What happens as a result of this? So I want to now shift gears and go into an organization, which again, I'm sharing these organizations because I think that what the work they're doing is so critically important that we should really support them. So Food and Water Watch. I want to kind of go back a little bit. I mentioned before that what's been on my mind is the behaviors around the time of COVID and a global pandemic, and we supposedly came out of that, but what are the lasting ramifications of business behavior? So corporate greed, two industries that used global crisis to rob us, by Angie Aker. Okay, this was a few years ago, September 19th, 2022, but really in the scheme of things, post-COVID, right around the corner. So from fossil fuel corporations to grocery conglomerates, multinational corporations, the fix is in to squeeze more money out of consumers. Record profits, more like record greed. So it's not your imagination. If everything that you remember about in and coming out of COVID felt like things cost more at the time, or maybe even it still does, it's because it actually did. Think about the things you usually buy at the grocery store and the retail shop. You add up your utilities and your gasoline. Since the pandemic started, prices have gotten higher and higher and higher for nearly everything that we need to live. Some industries, oil and gas, even use the existing war, which has happened since February 2022, have used the war in Ukraine as a pretense for scarcity, meaning fabricated or false issues, concerns of a scarcity of goods or supply to price gouge. And I want to go here. I do want to go here a little bit. Unchecked corporate greed affects every person in every family in the country. And voters are sick of it. And it'll be interesting to see now, as the Trump administration in the next few weeks comes in and says goodbye to Biden, Joseph Biden, that all of a sudden the notion of tariffs, we're going to put a higher price on goods coming into this country, as if that's going to level the playing field in terms of global country of origin competitive practices. No, it just means that the ultimate price that's paid by the consumer, Americans, is going to come up even further. Corporate giants are profiteering at the expense of ordinary people, and voters are unhappy. Polling from various organizations found that during this election cycle, 2024, a political system corrupted by corporate influence is one of the voters' top concerns, and it wasn't addressed at all. It was not addressed. So fight corporate monopolies. As an organization, reported our national polling and swing state focus groups with GBAO strategies finds that voters are fed up with corporate greed and want elected leaders to aggressively challenge monopolistic corporations and their malfeasance. And as a result, you can't make this shit up. The Trump incoming administration is laden, chock full with billionaires who are all going to get their significant tax breaks. This administration is run by billionaires, and yet they're going to go after corporate greed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's called the rhetorical question. Corporate greed showed itself in the supposed meat crisis. Go back to 2020. It may be a distant memory, but for me, it's not, and it shouldn't for you either. In 2020, a coronavirus killed millions and crumpled small businesses across the country. Corporate titans saw a chance to profit. Specifically, Tyson and Smithfield were prime examples. Trump hyped their PR about a meat shortage. Do you remember this? Meat packing plants pressured staff to work regardless of their illness in conditions that were even more unsafe than usual. Vice President Pence at the time appealed to meat packing workers, telling them how vital they were because lobbyists told him to do so. Even with the stunning unethical pressure, production fell, but from already unsustainably high levels. Because what was happening, which was one of the big lies, which was there was an overproduction of meat and meat products. Demand fell when consumers stopped eating out. Remember that during COVID? Remember when over 1 million Americans died? There was plenty of meat in storage. In fact, the US was so flush with meat supply that exports continued unabated as usual. Hashtag WTF. All while giant food corporations issued fake warnings about food shortages so that they could jack up prices. In fact, there were lawsuits that were filed against these organizations, in this case, Smithfield, who were lying about the organization. So Food and Water Watch, unsurprisingly, inflation is our top worry, but corporate greed isn't far behind. With 60% of voters in this 2024 election cycle very seriously concerned about corporate influence, and 49% were saying they were very seriously concerned about corporations not being held accountable for price gouging. And yet, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, this vicious loop of corporate greed and unethical behavior, this vicious cycle that's been reported for over 100 years, onwards it marches. Onwards it marches. So I want to address another concern. So we see in business circles that there's a proliferation in training and development, education, kind of programming. I do it in my practice. I do a lot of ethics-based training and leadership training. But look at the actual topics that are now proliferating. So for example, a really, really solid organization that does significant value in terms of training business leaders and professionals, Cogno. Look at what they've identified in business ethics trends and challenges in 2024. Look at what some of the courses that they offer are. So I'm going to go into some of the offerings. The latest trends in business and corporate ethics. So let's take a look at some of the latest trends in terms of ethics, training and development, professional development, increased focus on what's called ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria. One of the most significant trends right now as we head into 2025 in business is the heightened emphasis on environmental, social, and governance related issues. Companies are now evaluated not only on financial performance, and I've been saying this for 16 years, so welcome to the party, pal, but also on their environmental impact, social responsibility, and their governance. This shift reflects a growing recognition that sustainable and ethical business practices are critical for long-term viability. Okay, so let's deep dive. Environmental responsibility, what does that mean? Good definition from Cogno. Businesses are increasingly held accountable for their environmental footprint. It includes reducing carbon emissions, minimizing waste, and using sustainable materials. Case in point, I don't know if you've heard, but recently all the rage is lab manufactured diamonds. So getting away from blood diamonds, where companies would actually rape and pillage natural resources in cheapest labor markets in underdeveloped countries. We're moving away from that because it served to propagate and fund war-torn strife between tribes and significant societal population damage. So now we're moving away from that. Finally, social responsibility. Companies are expected to contribute positively to society, which involves fair labor practice, diversity, inclusion, and yet a lot of companies, from John Deere to Harley Davidson to Lowe's, are cutting back on DE&I initiatives at the pressure of right-wing influential bloggers and community engagement. Look, why not emulate those organizations who are doing great things already? Case in point, Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, founder, recently decided, relatively recently, to give away $3 billion of his family's fortune from Patagonia, putting it into a fund that would then be used to support climate change. Governance. Strong corporate governance ensures transparency, accountability, and ethical decision-making. Ladies and gentlemen, it's like turning a battleship. We don't just say we want to go over there from past horrific, unethical business practices and corporate greed. We want to go to their shining light on top of the hill. It's like turning a battleship. We directionally take decades to get there. But the 21st century transformational ethical organization is a work in progress, and it's happening. And I get really excited because I've been focused on it for the past 16 years in my business coaching practice. The next thing that is top of mind is the impact of artificial intelligence, especially in areas pertaining to data integrity, data privacy. With the proliferation of artificial intelligence and big data, ethical considerations surrounding privacy and data usage are paramount. Businesses have got to figure out how to navigate the fine line between taking data for innovation, leveraging it for competitive advantage and business effectiveness, and yet respecting individual privacy rights. Look, we've seen social media empires built with just a blatant disregard for people's data. Come on, man. Twitter, X, Facebook. It's there. It's right in front of our noses. The European Union's General Data Protection Regulation and similar laws worldwide set stringent standards for data protection, but ethical companies need to consider going far beyond mere compliance. Transparency is one area to address. Clear communication from organizations about their data collection and usage policies. Consent. Obtaining explicit consent from users before collecting data. What a novel idea. And lastly, security considerations. Implementing robust measures to protect data from breaches. So, these are some of the significant concerns that I have and led me to record this video. Is corporate greed is still out there. Greed is still good. Greed is still a motivating, powerful factor in the 21st century corporate consideration in the boardroom and in the leadership ranks. But we're slowly seeing a shift to more ethical business behavior. And we don't just do it because it's altruistic, because societally we need it, but we do it because we now have decades worth of body of research, organizational behavior, organizational development to tell us from organizations like Great Place to Work and Ethisphere and other organizations that have been researching company behavior and financial performance for decades. We know that organizations that act more ethically have employees who perform and produce at a higher level, and those organizations are ultimately more profitable. This is personal to me. I spent a decade researching for my second book, The Compassionate Organization. I spent a decade researching over 2,000 organizations in over 200 countries because I was motivated by a mindset of what, if any, characteristics do all organizations share who are typically a leader, number 2 or number 1 in financial performance in their respective industries, regardless of country of origin, country of incorporation. And it wasn't certain characteristics you think it might be, like leadership team, products, services, support from government entities. No, the single most determining factor, according to my decade-long research, the single most powerful factor that shows a direct cause line between organizational behavior and financial performance was having a compassionate culture. And that's what led me in 2018 to finish writing The Compassionate Organization. So thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video and my rant. If you liked what I have to say, please hit the like, smash the like button. Also, if you have any comments, please, positive, critical, share your comments for the benefit of the community. And lastly, if you took the time to come here, you'll see I have over 440 videos that I've produced. To support the work that I'm doing, please, please, please subscribe to my channel. So thank you for coming in, and I wish you much luck in helping to build the ethical organization of the 21st century.